Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the Epic Narrative.
And welcome back. Welcome back to the Epic Narrative. Always a pleasure to have you here. And we are continuing our roll through the book of Exodus. I say a roll because we are kind of hitting chapters at a time versus verses at a time because, as I said, so many of these verses have been broken down to almost infinite detail in volumes of books, both in the Jewish tradition and the evangelical tradition and the Catholic tradition. You can find information if you want to find it. Feel free. We're kind of looking at these in more of the broad brush filter of Jesus. And Jesus wrapped all of this up into two statements. In essence, love God and love people, just like you love yourself. So we're just gonna keep hitting that because we on the Epic Narrative believe that God is good and always has been good, and he didn't set up the system in order to prove that people are bad and then beat them up or kill them for it. He set up the system because it was something they demanded. It was something you and I demanded. We wanted something to separate us from God because intimacy with the God who actually cares about us and loves us and wants to bring us freedom was incredibly bizarre and scary to a slave nation, to a slave mentality, to a victim mentality. And you and I struggle with this too. Maybe some more than others, but generally speaking, that's what we're trying to get ourselves out of. And that is what that's the picture that's the filter that we run all this stuff through. So in chapter 28, we're going to begin there. Yeah, that's true. Bob just reminded me. In this season, I think that we spent 2 full episodes on a verse, I think, right? Was it chapter 21? It was like one verse, and then the third episode we started there again, but we at least got through the sixth. Yeah, you're right. So, yeah, we deserve to roll through a few chapters at a time, I think. Yes, I agree with you. All right. So here we go. Chapter 28, verse 1. Have Aaron your brother brought to you from among the Israelites, along with his sons Nadab and Abihu and Eleazar and Ithamar. Now, I've met a few Eleazars in my life. Ithamar. I kind of like that one too, though. That's kind of a cool name. And it's not that hard to spell either. Ithamar. All right. So anyways, so they may serve me as priests. Make sacred garments for your brother Aaron to give him dignity and honor. Tell all the skilled workers to whom I have given wisdom in such matters that they are able to make garments for Aaron for his consecration so that he may serve me as priest. These are the garments they are to make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a woven tunic, a turban, and a sash. They are to make these sacred garments for your brother Aaron and his sons so they may serve me as priests. Have them use gold and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen. All right, so let's go back. Aaron, of course, is Moses' older brother. Now, this was something he has always been. Moses' older brother. A role that I'm sure that he recognized early on. Moses is he's kind of a big deal. And I'm the older brother, but my little brother is the big deal. Now, there's just going to kind of be this natural human element to all of this. It's awesome that they work together so well. It really is. It speaks to Moses's humility and his leadership skill that his older brother could, in essence, work for him. Now, I know that in God's government, in the government of heaven, everybody works together, and it's more of it is really kind of a family connection. And I know that there are many pastors and leaders in various ministries that have always tried to make it a family affair. They always want to pass it on, to be a legacy. But unfortunately, they don't look at it like a family affair. They look at it like a kingdom, and they want they want the crown to be passed on to somebody with the same last name. That's an unfortunate mirror, a negative mirror to what God tries to put together when it comes to family. He wants people to work together as a family, to integrate as a family. He wants them to have conversations and communicate like a family. He doesn't want them to communicate and connect like a hierarchy, where you can't press back against the one in charge. You can't find influence and then pressure the one in charge to make a decision. It has to be a conversation around the dinner table. That's the concept behind the, quote, government of heaven. It's that of dignity and honor, of love, of freedom. It's a conversation that doesn't bring up the dirt in someone's life, but is always bringing out the gold in someone's life. Family is family is naturally positioned to know all the bad stuff in your life. They're just naturally there. There's no way around it. And in that natural position where they saw you grow up and saw all the decisions you made, they remember those things. And then when you come back, whether it's from a journey or you grow up, you mature, family is often the last ones to actually look at you and say, "Oh, man, you are awesome." Because family's like, "Hey, you're awesome now, but you remember when?" And it can dig at you, right? It can really give you an opportunity to process and to grow from the fact that they won't let you grow. I struggled that. I did. I did. I left. I went away to a boarding high school. I grew up, in essence, out of my family life. They saw me periodically, and I'd come home in the summer and I'd go work at a summer camp for 10 weeks, and then I'd come home for 2 weeks and go back to school. And I had a great time. But it was well into, even after high school, into college. I was married. Oh my word. Like it took forever, I think, for some members of my family to remember that I wasn't a little boy anymore who could be told what to do and expected to do it, who actually had an opinion or thought process. And, it's a natural thing to do. So I imagine Aaron periodically would be like, remembering something about the fact that, he was the older brother to Moses. Yes, Moses was the next in line to be the Pharaoh of Egypt, but he was the older brother. I don't know. I just it's a dynamic that I like to think about. And for those 40 years that Moses was in Midian and Aaron was back, and he was a priest for the Israelites, there had to be some conversation about the fact that his younger brother was a murderer. There had to be some memory of the fact that his younger brother was, had lost his position of power that could have freed the people, that he tried to take on a role that wasn't his to have. There's lots of things that I'm sure gave opportunity for the enemy to break these two guys up, and he couldn't do it. And that speaks to Moses' humility, and it speaks to Aaron's understanding that family is family. And just because you're older doesn't mean you have to be the one in charge of everything. Now, you might be, but it doesn't mean you have to be. In a hierarchical system, absolutely. And a lot of families are run like that too, right? The father is the bottom line. Why? Because I'm the dad. And then all the children must obey. and there isn't that conversation and there isn't that inclusion in the conversation. And I had to learn that too. There were things that I did in our family life, that I didn't really find out about till my children were married and had kids of their own. And there was a very definitive day. It actually lasted a couple weeks, but there was a very definitive day where my decisions that were made from the top down. It was a top down decision. Was it a good decision? Yeah. Was it one they probably would have agreed with? Absolutely. Did I include them in the decision-making process? No, I didn't. Should I have? Absolutely. Because it impacted literally their everyday life for years to come. And I didn't even consider to have a conversation with them. And they had kind of filed it away as, well, this is Dad's house. He made the decision. That's the way it's going to go. And I thought, man, when I realized that, I was crushed. I was crushed that I had done that to my children. I had so excluded them from such a major decision in their life that impacted their everyday world. And I never even thought to ask them, because I just figured absolutely they'll agree with me. Oh, this will be great. We'll do this. And what's crazy is I was right. They would have. And what I was also crazy to do was not include them in the conversation. Anyway, family. Now remember, Aaron grew up with a slave mindset just like everyone else, right? And he needed to also work out and be, we'll call it delivered or healed from that slave mindset to one of sonship and family and being a child of God that loves and cares for his children. And that's a tough journey to make. And that just reminds us again that just because someone's in charge of something doesn't mean they don't have their own journey to take. And so many people who are in leadership, and I'll just use again, people in ministry, they are often not allowed the freedom to grow and to learn and to question and to, in essence, be on a journey, because now they're in charge. Especially in the ministry, you're in charge of other people's spiritual lives. So you got to have your spiritual life together. And if you don't, you better not show it to anybody. Now, I know that is, again, another broad brush filter, but it's not unheard of. And there are many in ministry that have walked away in order to gain healing. And some of them go back into ministry and they are much better for it. And others never go back because they weren't allowed to grow, because they weren't allowed that freedom. They were hurt and offended and rejected by their denomination, by their congregation, by their ministry heads, by the executive board, and then they were just left in the wind. And they were basically like, forget it. If that's the way Christians operate, if that's the paradigm in which they treat leadership, then I'm done. I'm out. I'll just go work for normal people who don't care about their employees, and at least then I can expect it. But we give off this vocabulary that says, hey, we're family, hey, we're community, hey, we're connected, and then we're not. And we end up hurting people, including those in leadership. So there has to be room for people to learn and grow and move amongst us and not have to be in lockstep with the man on top or the board on top or the girl on top. Doesn't matter who's on the top of the hierarchy. The hierarchical system automatically starts to hurt people. You can't avoid it, because by design, you are pushing out those who don't fully agree with the mission, with the direction, or with the decision of whatever's on top. Moses and Aaron worked together, and not only Aaron, but also his sons, who were probably in their 40s at least. But that slave mentality is something Aaron had to grow out of. Now, slaves by nature, we've talked about this before, I shouldn't say by nature, slaves by culture are self-preserving and victims in how they generally see life. And I have to make these broad statements, or we will be here all day if I make every little exception. But generally speaking, a slave mentality is self-preservation and being a victim. They're constantly in that mindset of I have it worse than anyone else. I have it worse, and I need that. I can't give it away. Now, that's different than people who are poor and generous. Generosity has nothing to do with the amount of money you have or the amount of resources you have, right? And I'm not saying all slaves are equally not generous. Some of them are tremendously generous, but when they give it to you, they will turn around and let everyone know, hey, I gave that to them, and they didn't do enough in return for me. I did my best. I was there for them. I showed up. I gave them a ride. I loaned them money. I watched their children. I provided services. They didn't thank me. They didn't pay me enough. You would have thought they would have given me more. It happens. It happens. And that's a tough thing. A slave mentality is a tough thing to walk out, to get untangled from, but you can do it. It just takes a lot of work. Aaron would have had to do this. Now, his role as a priest and high priest for Aaron and his sons, in concept, they were supposed to help people focus on taking on, by taking on the burdens and interceding for the nation. That was their goal, right? To help people also walk out this slave mentality, also make connection to God, also find the relational aspects to the kingdom mindset. So they had to do it themselves, and they had to lead the people in it. See, in Egypt, it was just about politics. It was about keeping control, maintaining your position of leadership. It was about making people believe that you were doing all you could on their behalf. But here, it's about helping others see how they can connect to God more deeply. It's about being merciful. It's about being gracious. It's about performing rituals in a way that points people to a closer relationship with God, and not trying to build up some sort of fear of losing your position before God. That you can do these things, but these things really aren't the answer. These things are just a picture of what is possible, that you that you can get a one-on-one relationship with God. And this is what happens when leadership, especially because we're dealing with priestly leadership here, when a priestly leadership or church leadership or ministry leadership really helps the people in the pews understand that they have the opportunity to be as close to God as anyone, anywhere, at any time throughout history, that they literally can walk with God that closely. You are, at some level, saying any one of you can be more spiritual than me. And for a lot of preachers, that's a scary thing. Now, in concept, they'd say, oh, absolutely, anybody can grow. Anybody could get as close to God as they want. That's the beauty of the kingdom, full of grace and love. And yet, what they box you into, right? What they're programming, the programming of a church, generally speaking, I'm not nailing every church down here. Generally speaking, the programming of a church and ministry is, you come here and we provide you with what we think you need to grow. Not only does that keep you lazy in only listening to those that have already done the work, but it also boxes you in to only grow as far as they'll let you. And part of that, I think, is why people often will leave one church and go to another, is because they're like, okay, I'm not growing anymore. I think we are deep inside, we are intuitively wired to grow in relationship with God. And when that doesn't happen at a place that's supposed to get us closer to God, or when that stops happening, then we often find ourselves unsatisfied, and we go somewhere else. But unfortunately, most of the time, that somewhere else is also telling us, You just keep coming here. We will feed you what you need. You didn't thrive over there because they don't have what we have, but we have something better. We have something more. We have something greater. So Aaron and his sons needed to help everyone walk this out, including themselves. They had to walk out of that kind of mentality. And you couldn't lead the people and also fear losing your position. So God was like, let's make sure everyone knows that they are the priests. They aren't perfect, but they are the priests. Let's give them trappings. Let's give them an outfit so people treat them with dignity and honor. The vestments were made from the offerings of the people so that the priests were reminded that they were covered by the people, not just powerful ones, not just rich ones, not just ones that could afford or donated all the vestments, like some wealthy person writing a check. Like, well, I'll tell you what, you guys need a new office building. Let me cover that for you. No, this was from everyone. Now, granted, everyone was, in essence, pretty wealthy at this point because they were all given so much wealth from the Egyptians when they left. But that is just the way it is. Everyone gave, and the priests were covered by them, both their clothes, their hat, their sash, hat. I know that's terrible, right? It's not really a hat. The turban, and the ephod. All of that came from the people. So in verse 3, it says, I like this, verse 3. Tell me, Bob's laughing. Verse 3, we're 20 minutes into this. I know. I promise. We'll get through this. Tell all the skilled workers to whom I have given wisdom in such matters that they are to make garments for Aaron. I love the fact that God says, meet with the people that I have given wisdom. That word for wisdom can also be taken and interpreted and translated creativity, who I have given creativity to. Creativity is wisdom. And I've given that to them in order to do beautiful weaving and stonework of the vestments. You meet with them, Moses. I love the fact that God's deeply involved in art and in the trades and in creativity. This is the wisdom of heaven. All right, now we will go fast, I promise. Verses 5 through 29 is really just a bunch of details, and they have so many meanings for the people. But God was, what I would just want you to remember, I'm not going to read it all to you. God is using a language that people can relate to. He's using symbolisms that people can relate to. This is very much like dream interpretation. Everything when God speaks, it's a living word. So even in a dream, it can mean something for you the next day. It could also mean something for you 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 3 months from now, because God's word is a living thing. And it's not that it has a different meaning. It just all of a sudden that it fits again. And it means something new to you. And that's the essence and the beauty of God's word. Now, I do know that there are many who are like, only the Bible only, and sometimes they get a little scary to me because they actually worship the Bible and not really God. And people do the same thing with creation. They'll worship creation and not the creator. Sometimes they worship the word and not the author. Sometimes, it's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but I'm just saying I'm not here to like beat them up or claim to be better. I've done the same thing. It's easily done. We have to keep in mind who is putting together all these symbols, and it's always designed to speak to the person and to draw them into a relationship with God. You see, when you look at a symbol, or when you have a dream, or when you're out in creation and you see something that's breathtaking, as my wife and I have seen so many things on our journey around the country, and we didn't even see half the national parks, but just the ones we went to. We drive in and even looking back at the pictures, it's breathtaking. It's like, I remember being there. Like it's so overwhelming. It's exhausting, actually. I remember one time, actually several times, we went to like 3 parks in a day, just all day on the road. It was awesome. And then we got home and it was like, well, what are we doing tomorrow? Well, we're going to go to 2 more. And it's like, I don't know if I can. And we found that we literally needed a day of rest because our emotionally, it was so overwhelming to see that kind of beauty. Well, these symbols that are wrapped around the tabernacle and surrounding the tabernacle and on top of every post and carved into every knob and candlestick and all that sort of thing. All these things are designed to speak to people because, remember, they were afraid to actually hear God speak. They didn't want that kind of closeness. So he spoke to them in a language that they wouldn't be intimidated by and that their spirit could connect to. And his plan, his hope, his goal is that over time, they would no longer need the temple and would understand that they could be in relationship with God. But part of that plan was that the priests would lead people in that direction. God made a system that the people would be comfortable with interacting and being around, but not staying there. He didn't want them to stay there. But they had that choice. They had to choose more of God or more of the system, more religion. The priest had to do their job to move people toward more of God and less of religion. But in doing so, if the priests weren't healed from their slave mentality, it would certainly sound like and look like that they were voluntarily working themselves out of a job. They would be voluntarily giving up authority and power. That's tough for a slave to do. That's tough for a victim to do. Because, man, power is intoxicating. When you're at the top of a pyramid, it is an incredibly intoxicating role to have. And even though you may be trapped up there, you may periodically think, I don't want all this power. I don't want all this authority. I can't deal with all the pressure. Giving it up is not something most people can do. It's not that it's never been done, but most people can't do it. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating study. A lot of times people will just retire or they'll make a sudden change because they can't figure out a way to share the power. So they basically dump the power off to somebody else because they got no idea how to walk it out. It's tough to get untangled from. I would love to help people do it because I think that there's some amazing people that have been given or ultimately kind of expected and pushed into these roles on top of a hierarchical system, and really they know they want to share it. I think their hearts are for the people. They want to be with the people. They want to be a family. They don't know any other system. Now, I do want to read verse 30. This is pretty funny. Also put the Urim and the Thummim in the breastplate so that they may be over Aaron's heart whenever he enters the presence of the Lord. Thus Aaron will always bear the means of making decisions for Israelites over his heart for the Lord. These two things were basically dice. And he could roll the dice to make a decision for the people. Anytime Aaron, he could ask God a question and he could roll the dice. This is crazy. I'm sorry. There's just no way around that. That's just nuts. I mean, if you ever wanted an excuse to play the lottery at least once, right? You could say, God told me to play these numbers. And, if you're right, then you're right. And if not, I don't know how often you can do that and keep saying, God told me. But Aaron literally could roll the dice and figure out what God wanted to say. It's one of those things that I think a lot of preachers get uncomfortable bringing up because it does open that door for so many people to be like, wait, what? But I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful and kind of fun that God's like, this is how simple it is to hear from me. This is how simple it is. I literally can speak through anything. I want to speak to you directly. you are welcome to open that door at any time. But until then, I will speak to you through symbolism. I will speak to you through ritual, and I will speak to you through the rolling of dice, because I want interaction with my creation. I want my people to be in constant fellowship and connection to me and conversation with me. And it is the role of the priest to help people understand that. This was the way of God talking to his people without freaking them out. Right? It brings a degree of separation, but it also encourages conversation. God always wants more conversation. Aaron could literally roll the dice 100 times a day if he wanted to. He could have constant conversations with God. And I believe if he did roll it that often, if he just constantly was like, hey, God, what about this? Hey, God, what about this? Eventually he'd figure out, I've had enough back and forth with God that I know what he would say. And then the mind of God starts to overcome the mind of our nature, of our sinful nature. And we are given the mind. Christ said, right? You have the mind of Christ. That's God. We have it. I know that there are many preachers, man, they are not going to tell you that. They don't want you to really believe it. They want you to believe you get that when you get to heaven. Because if you think that you can think like God here on earth, then you're not coming to church anymore. You're not going to listen to their ministry anymore. Oh, it's a dangerous thing to give people that much freedom. Oh, no. We need to keep them sinners. We need to keep them in control. We need to keep them afraid of God just enough that they behave correctly. And the way we do that is make them believe that God will kill them if they misbehave too much. We don't know where that line is. We're not going to tell them where that line is because we don't know where that line is. Oh, man. But we got to control the people. Anyways, the rest of the chapter, he continues to go on. He even had, at the end of the chapter, he has to make undergarments for the priests because he doesn't want their privates to show, which evidently was a regular thing amongst priests, in all the idol worship temples and stuff. You were, you were seen by the people as they bowed down on the ground, and you walked up the steps to the altar. They could see right up your shorts or skirt or whatever. And God was like, he made it clear, I don't want the altar up high. I don't want you walking upstairs. I don't want people looking up your skirt. And then he also had to make undergarments because he was like, I don't want your privates hanging out. Just a thought. Just a thought when it comes to modesty. Maybe. I know we don't live in the Old Testament. I know that. We've talked about that. But the heart of the Father is still the same. The heart of the Father is, don't expose yourself. It doesn't mean don't wear pretty things or only wear these things. I'm not advocating for those kind of religious rules. I'm saying the general concept of modesty is don't expose yourself. Just be careful. I don't know what that means. I don't know. Stop it, Bob. No, I'm 33 minutes into this. I've got another whole chapter to go. So no, I'm not going to get all kinds of... no, that would be funny. I do actually, that would be... Maybe I'll do a TikTok on it because it is funny to talk about things like that because people do get really animated about stuff. They get very animated about modesty. It's true. All right, on to the next chapter. Chapter 29. This is what you are to do to consecrate them, so that they may serve me as priests. Now, the consecration or inauguration was to basically take place for 7 days. Now, we get one chapter of it here. We get 7 chapters of that 7 days in the book of Leviticus. In the book of Leviticus. Wow, what, are you on drugs? No, I'm not on drugs. It's just... Sometimes I've told you guys this before in the Epic Narrative, but I had an incredible stuttering problem as a child, and sometimes I run into it still. It's a mental It's a mental overload. That's what they determined over time. It was like there is nothing wrong with Bob. He just thinks so fast his tongue can't keep up. So I have to calm myself. Calm yourself, Bob. Just calm yourself. I don't need drugs. I just need to calm myself, which I do periodically. And when I hear myself stuttering, I just kind of have fun with it. Sometimes I slap myself in the back of the head, which is something you used to have to do way back in the day of CD players, Walkmans, we used to call them. And they'd get dust on them, and you had to blow it off or hit it, and it would skip the dust and keep going. And that's what I do sometimes on the back of my head, just to kind of remind myself, hey, slow down, big fella. Just let it out slow. So the first round of the week-long consecration, right, was Aaron and his sons. They placed their hands on the animals. That was a symbol of confession and placing the sins of the person on the animal. They didn't actually put their sins there. It's symbolism. They're like, this is what we do. We bring our sins, and then we kill it. Why? Because sins are dead in the presence of God. Light destroys darkness. The animal was killed. The blood was shed. The sins went up in smoke. Now, it was different details. Each part, different parts were cut for this and burned for that and cooked for that. Each of the symbol was a symbol, but it was only a symbol. And this was the picture for the people that God understood what they were asking for. They didn't want him to speak directly, so he was speaking to them indirectly, but it was still speaking to them so that they could understand. But remember, God wasn't in need of any of this. He did not need the symbolism of the shedding of blood to cover the sins. They needed that. The shedding of blood was what the world had come up with. And ultimately, it would always lead to the death of the firstborn son. That's, we've been over that before. Verse 22, right? Just another example. Take from the ram the fat tail, and the fat from the internal organs, and the long lube of the liver, and both kidneys with the fat on them, and the right thigh. This is the ram for the ordination. From the basket of bread, make without yeast, which is before the Lord. Take one round loaf, one thick loaf, and olive oil mixed in it, and one thin loaf. Put all of these in the hands of Aaron and his sons, and have them wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. Then take them from their hands and burn them on the altar, along with the burnt offering for a pleasing aroma to the Lord, a food offering presented to the Lord. And after you take the breast of the ram from Aaron's ordination, wave it before the Lord as a wave offering, and be sure that you share it. It's just fascinating. The ram was a peace organ and a peace offering, and all the parts were to be waved before the Lord as a symbol. This is a symbol before you, Lord. And then it was to be cooked, and then it was to be shared. It was to be a family affair. Now, the horns of the altar, is a word that could mean extensions. They could be actual horns. It could just be a block of wood that extended off the side of the altar. Sometimes people get hung up on that, what it looked like, what it could have looked like. They find in archaeology, they find one or two of these symbols, and they're like, see, this is all wrong because this isn't a horn, or the Bible's wrong because it's just a block of wood, and that's not what it says. It says horn, so yada yada yada. You just have to break it down. You have to understand what's being written. And these were places that people could go for the symbol of freedom and of being covering. Verse 31, take the ram for the ordination and cook the meat on a sacred place at the entrance of the temple of the tent of meeting. Have his sons there to eat the meat of the ram and the bread of the basket. They're to eat the offerings which by atonement was made for their ordination and consecration. So again, the family was to sit down and have a big old banquet when the ram was eaten. are taken. But he said, whatever is left over, burn it up. It must not be eaten because it is sacred. They did everything that God asked them to do. 7 days of atonement. Then the altar will be most holy, and whatever touches it will be holy. So he goes, it's just filled. It just goes on and on. Trust me, in Leviticus, it's like I said, it's 7 chapters of details as to what goes on. I just want to say in verse 44, for me, this is where, again, is very important. So I will consecrate the tent of the meeting and the altar and will consecrate Aaron and his sons to serve me as priests. Then I will dwell among the Israelites and be their God. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God who brought them up out of Egypt so that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. He makes it clear. You go through all of this because I want people to see that, that I listen to them. But I'm the one who consecrates everything. God's saying, listen, all of that is just ritual. It doesn't actually do anything. I do it all. I consecrate the altar. I consecrate Aaron. I consecrate his sons. I dwell amongst the Israelites because I want to. They will know I am the Lord their God who brought them up out of Egypt. I dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. He doesn't say, listen, if you don't do this right, I ain't coming. If you don't do this right, then the consecration doesn't work. And when they touch the altar the next time, they'll be dead, because if you're not consecrated correctly, then you've broken the law. And if you break the law, you die. Those are religious mindsets that come in as they transition and apply the law to everyday life. Aaron, Moses, and others add in this thought of death. Here in the last verse, to me, it just tied it all back together. God's like, I take care of all this. I take care of both ends of this covenant between us. I'm never leaving. I'm the Lord their God. I will dwell among them because I want to. And hopefully they understand that. Through all that we do, I want them to know that I am the Lord their God and I never lead them. This is what you're supposed to teach them, Aaron. This is what you and your sons are supposed to constantly hammer home to them. I am dwelling among them. I am the Lord their God. They don't need to fear that I'm going to leave them. They don't need to fear that I'm going to kill them. They don't need to even do these sacrifices if they understand what I'm offering. And at any time that they choose, they can be that close to me. So time will tell, right? Is that direction the direction that Aaron and his sons taught? Well, we will continue this story next week on The Epic Narrative.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
All right. What are my thoughts this week? Well, I listened to the whole thing and I liked it. No, you know what? I'll tell you what's going on. All right. So right now I'm working at the time of this recording. I say that phrase because, some of you might not hear this for years and it won't be true anymore. But right now I'm working at an RV camp, and generally so far in this first week, I've worked in the cafe. And in the cafe, I'm the new guy. So I'm being trained by guys, men, women who have been working the cafe for 3-4 years. Honestly, it's a great little camp to work for. There are many people that have worked here for 4, 5, 6, 10 years. It's a great place to work. So I'm doing my best just to, pay attention, do what they do, because clearly they know what they're doing. But you know what? Cooking, right? You have your own deal about cooking, and everyone that trains me has like these little nuances. Like, well, we cook the bacon for this long because it's really good if you get it real crispy. And I'm thinking, no, I don't like crispy bacon. I don't. I like my bacon chewy. I like it I like it warm, hot, but not like crispy. I don't want to bite into my sandwich and have like chips of bacon falling out. Like I don't. So I just nod. You know, and yesterday it came up again. Guy making pizza. He's like, oh, you gotta leave it. You know, we put it in the pizza oven. You push pizza. It air fries it at 600 degrees or whatever, and he's like, well, you got to put it in for another minute because you want it to be really crispy. You want that cheese to be nice and toasted on top. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want toasted cheese on my pizza. I want like gooey cheese. I want melted cheese. I don't want crispy brown cheese. But he just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. You know, brown toasted cheese on the top of there, and the edge, you know, the crust of the was, you know, shattered when you cut it because it was so toasted. And I started thinking, I like soft things, I guess. I like my pizza. I like it warm. You know, I like the cheese to be melted, but and I like my crust to be soft. I don't want it that toasty. So I'm thinking, well, someday maybe they'll leave me alone and I can make pizza the way I like it. Because that's just the way it goes. I'm going to make it the way I like it. But like I said, I like bacon soft. I started thinking about it. I like my eggs soft. You know, I've been at people's houses. They cook me eggs. They're like, hey, you want sunny side up eggs? Sure. And they like put them down. And they're cooking in the frying pan, and then they put like a cover on top of it. And by the time I get it, it's just the colors. It's white and it's yellow. There's no goop, there's no runniness, there's no softness to it. It is a crispy egg. And I think, no, I don't like did I eat it? Absolutely. Was their kindness and hospitality was sweet. And did it taste like an egg? Yes. It's just not. I like my eggs. I like them over easy, you know, like just barely flip it over. And then when you cut the white part, it's still clear in the middle. And then when you cut into the yolk, it just runs everywhere. It's awesome. It's awesome. But I like my scrambled eggs loose as well. You know, there's people that scramble eggs until they are freakishly dry. And they just like, oh, I love these eggs. And I'm like, no, I don't love these eggs. I'll eat them. You made them. I'm not going to complain. But I like my scrambled eggs loose. I like them loose. So yeah, I'm a big fan of pudding. Big fan of well, I like brownies and cookies, but I like them. Well, you guessed it. I like them soft. I don't want a crispy cookie or a dried up brownie. Ugh, it's the worst. It's like, wow, you had a chance to make this amazing and then you left it in for another, whatever, seems like an extra hour by the time I got it. Now, I know I've burned a few rounds of cookies in my life. I get it. Sometimes you just make a mistake. But, you know, some people like those cookies. Oh, look, they snap in half. I'm like, no, if they snap... Okay, I'll eat them. I'll eat them. But I'd prefer a gooey. As a matter of fact, don't even cook the brownie or the cookie. Just like give me a couple scoops of the dough. That'll work out. And please, for the love of all that's good in this world, do not put coconut flakes or nuts in the brownies or the cookies. I don't need that kind of interruption in my life. It's kind of like tuna fish with celery. What is that? What is that? Oh, I like a little crunch. No crunching. No crunching. It's fish. No crunching. No, don't crunch. I know. I'm the weird one, right? Oh, here's another one. My kids make fun of this too. I like my ice cream soft. Now I don't like soft ice cream. Like if I go to an ice cream shop and all they have is soft ice cream, it's like, yeah, well, whatever. That's fine. I'll eat it. But I literally scoop ice cream and I put it in the microwave. I soften it up. Now, I was told by a chef of a high-end restaurant that actually what I'm doing releases more flavor than ice-cold ice cream. And that high-end restaurants actually do that on purpose. They'll actually keep it at a specific temperature rather than just, in the freezer. It actually has, their ice cream will have its own freezer, and it's kept at a slightly warmer temperature. It keeps its form, but it maximizes the flavor. But honestly, I end up making a milkshake out of it anyway. It's just the way I am. And what did that have to do with anything in today's episode? I have no idea. Oh, wait. We'll talk about the priests. They ate the ram at the front of the tent. Remember? Yeah, see, so I was going to tie this all back into food anyways. Yes, you have to know what you like. And what they didn't eat, they tossed. So one of the things I do find interesting when you talk about the sacrifices and the rams and the bulls and the goats and all that stuff is the amount of time that takes and the blood that it takes. There had to be so much blood, and it takes time, all the time, to do sacrifices. So when you read these verses, take the time to think about the time that it takes to kill an animal, drain it of blood, gut it, skin it. I mean, that's humanly like a lot of physical effort to pull that all off. Then cut it up, put it on the cooker, on the altar, cook it up, and then, when it's right, give it, eat it. Someone reminded me that one of our listeners called me. We made arrangements for the phone call. He called me, and he brought up a story of Elijah and Elisha, and when Elisha took over for Elijah and he left the village he was in, he took 24 oxen, sacrificed them all, and distributed, basically had this massive cookout. 24 of oxen, of course, spoke to the incredible wealth that Elijah had, but also, what did he do? He fed the people. But we talked about how much time that took. You don't cook a 1,000-pound animal in a matter of, an hour or two. You think about how much time it takes you to cook a 13-pound turkey, right? It's, 35 minutes per pound or something like that? You're in there for hours. It's hours and hours and hours of cooking that it takes to do this kind of stuff. So always keep that stuff in mind. I always do anyways. When you read scripture, it just takes way more time than it does to read the scripture. We're talking hours. All right, that's enough thoughts today. Good grief, I think it's 10 minutes long. I hope you guys are having a great day. And now you know what I like to eat. So if I ever come to your house, keep it soft and loose. And please, no nuts or coconut. All right, thank you. Flakes, coconut flakes. I don't mind the flavor. Okay, that's enough. Just stop with this madness. Have a good day. See you next week on The Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.